Today's shiur begins at the Mishnah that you'll find a little more than halfway down Daf Samach Gimel, 14 lines from the top. Koinim yayin she'eni toyem l'shana. Person vows not to benefit from wine, not to consume wine for a year. Nisabra hashana, if the year is lengthened by a month, which is characteristic of an ibur shana, shnasa ibur, where an extra ador is added to the calendar. Ozer ba uva ibura. The term year that he took upon himself will include that added month. Ad Rosh Ador, if a person vowed not to consume something until the beginning of Ador. Ad Rosh Ador Horishon. The result would be that in a case of a leap year, he will be prohibited only until the beginning of the first of the two Adors. If he says Ad Sof Ador, and now the next word is a point of machlokes, which girsa you use. The girsa that you see in the text is until the end of the first Ador. However, on the side, there is a girsa that says until the end of the second Ador. Alma stama de Ador de komar. You can see from this Mishnah that when a person uses the term Ador without qualifying, Rishon hu, that would indicate that he's dealing with the first Ador. Well, if that's the case, Leimo Masnisin Rebbe Yehudahi. Should we say then that our Mishnah is in accordance with only Rebbe Yehuda? I emphasize only Rebbe Yehuda because as we go on in the Gemara, we will see that there is another Shlita that appears, and at this point it sounds though that our Mishnah is in accordance only with Rebbe Yehuda. The Sanya, we have a Tanaic source, and by the way, note that we have a long question. The source says, Ado Harishon, Kosev Ado Harishon. When a person is preparing a document and he wants to make reference to the first of two Adors, so he has to indicate this is Ador Rishon. However, if in the document the reference is going to be made to the second Ador, Ador Sheni Kosev Ador Stam, Divrei Rebbe Meir, then all you would need to do is write Ador without qualifying which one, and it would be understood that it's a reference to the second Ador, which is seemingly not like our Mishnah. Rebbe Yehuda Oimer, Ador Horishon Kosev Stam. When you want to make reference to the first Ador, you write Ador in an unqualified fashion. Ador Sheni, if your point is to make reference in the document to the second Ador, Kosev Tinyan. You should write the second. Tinyan is second in Aramaic. So the Gemara's question then is our Mishnah to be understood as just according to Rabbi Yehuda, who said the Ador Stam, the unqualified Ador, is Ador Rishon? Rabbi Meir. You can explain our Mishnah along the lines of Rabbi Meir as well. So now the issue is, we have to make up our minds. An unqualified Ador, is it the first or the second? So it all depends. Ha di yoda de ma'abro shasa, ha de lo yoda. If the person knows that the year has been extended, so then that is Rabbi Meir in the Braisa, that an unqualified Ador, we'll call it the objective citation Ador, that would be a reference to the second Ador. Once again, that's when you're dealing with someone that is aware, or it is known that the year has been extended. Ha de lo yoda, our Mishnah is referring to a situation where it's not known that the year is going to be extended. The issue of under what circumstances and how and etc. a year was extended, that's a separate discussion that's found in Maseches Sanhedrin. But for our purposes, the distinction is clear, and therefore our Mishnah is dealing with a case where it's not known that there is going to be a second Ador, and hence the reference to Ador would be then the first Adar in the event that the year is eventually extended. We continue at the top of Omid Beis, V'ha Tanya, and here you'll see a support in a Tanaic source to what we're answering now. Note, though, that it takes a few lines to develop this point. That we call this a long point, a Nekuda Aruka, long point. V'ha Tanya, the support source says, Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar, Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar Harishon. If a person says, or he writes that something is going to take place or something is going to be effective until Adar, without qualifying it, it's until the first Adar. Im hoisa shana mu'uberes ad Rosh Chodesh Adar Hasheni. If it's an extended year, then it's until it's the beginning of the second Adar. The Gemara has to now develop the point. Are we to understand the Reisha then, in contrast to the Seifa, is not a Shana Muberes? When you read the Seifa, the second line of this source, it says, and if it's a leap year, then such and such, such and such. Does that mean that up till that point it was not a leap year? In other words, up until that point in this Tanaic source, when you read the Reisha, it was not a leap year. That's not true, though. So let's read this in the text. Michlal de Reisha lab b'mu'uberes askinan. Are we to then infer that the Reisha was not talking about a leap year? That's not true. The first line, the Reisha of the source says that if a person says until Adar, until Rosh Chodesh Adar, it's until the Rosh Chodesh of the first Adar. When you say first, you know that there is a second. So then, in this very source, are we seeing a contradiction? In the Reisha, it's also talking about an extended year, a Muberes. So how in the Reisha, if a person says Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar, it's the first Rosh Chodesh, and in the Seifa, an extended year, it says when you say until Rosh Chodesh, it's until the beginning of the second Rosh Chodesh. So what's the resolution? Shma Mina, you see from here. The Seifa is talking about a situation where it's clear that it's a leap year, and in a situation where it's clear that it's a leap year, so when you say Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar, it's until the beginning of the second Adar. The Reisha is talking about a situation where he doesn't know that it's a leap year. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a leap year. However, he doesn't know about that. And therefore, when he says Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar, it will be until the beginning of the first Adar. The Mishnah. Note that this is one of the rare cases in the Shas that you have a Mishnah with no Gemara commentary on it. Very simply because most of the points that you see in this Mishnah were already dealt with in other Gemaras. The markings, though, are plentiful here. You'll notice on the side we have a mivneh, and triangles appear. Hadgoshas koinam, b'tzur shoynu l'chol bava shel Mishnah. The word koinam, which is, of course, the word indicating one's vow, will appear with slightly different triangles for the separate sections of the Mishnah. But they all highlight the word koinam, and we have another marking, a double underline, which highlights the expression ad shiyahei. That will be in the first section of the Mishnah, where a vow is taken with it's a self-imposed restriction until something, and we'll see different examples, and those are highlighted with the double underline. When we get to the next section of Mishnah, we'll have more markings to explain. In the meantime, the Mishnah begins, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Koinim Yayin She'eni Toim Ad Sheyehei HaPesach. Person vows not to consume wine, Ad Sheyeh HaPesach, Einu Osur Elo Ad Leil Pesach. He is restricted through this vow up till the night ushering in Pesach. We call this Seder night. Shelo niskaven ze elo ad shal shederech b'nei adam lishtos yayin. He did not intend through this vow to restrict himself till a point where people are accustomed to drinking wine. In other words, if we look in Rashi, he certainly wanted to drink the 4 cups of wine that people drink Pesach night. Shekol Adam Shosim. That's when everyone drinks wine. So when he was imposing the self-imposed wine restriction, it would be only up till, but not including, up till the point that everyone else will be drinking. And as Rashi says, he certainly would want to be along with everybody else in their wine drinking. So his restriction is only up till that point, but not including. The Mishnah continues, Omar Koinen Boser Sheni Toim Ad Shiehei Hatzom. He restricts himself from eating meat until the fast. Eino Ozer Ela Ad Leilei Tzom. He is restricting himself only until up till, but not including, up till the night which is followed by a daytime fast. What's characteristic of the night that precedes a daytime fast? The night time is a time everyone eats meat in anticipation of the fast. He didn't intend to restrict himself except up till the point that people eat meat. So his restriction is up till that point, but not including it. Rabbi Yossi benoi oimer koinim shum she'ani toyem. This is the Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, who opened the Mishnah. He says that if a person imposed upon himself a restriction in consuming shum is often translated as garlic. So this vow is, he says, let me read the whole text, Koinim shum shalitoim ad shiei Shabbos, Eino Oser elo ad leilei Shabbos. His vow will be binding through Friday, but Friday night the vow no longer continues. It was a custom to eat garlic Friday night, and he, in taking this vow, didn't intend to preclude himself from the consumption of shum when everyone else, in fact, consumes it. As you can see, we have a slash mark indicating a new series of konam vows. On the side, we have a house marking which highlights in opposite directions with the point facing up, she'ani neheneloch, and the opposite direction is she'ato neheneli. So that the first vow was a person saying that I will not benefit from you unless such and such, and the second vow is he vows that the other party shall not benefit from him. The Mishnah, Ha'omer lechaveru koinem she'ani ne'neloch im ein at ba v'noitel levonecha kur echad shel chita mishtei chavis shel yayin. A person swears not to benefit from B unless B comes and takes from A measure, kur is a measure of chitim of wheat, and 2 barrels of wine. So that's the text of the vow. Harei zeh yochol lahofer es nidro shelo al pi chacham. The subject of the vow, the person, Mr. B, who was restricted in benefiting from A through this vow, can undo the vow, can absolve himself from the vow, even without going to a Talmud Chacham, without going to a Torah sage, which is the ordinary track for having vows absolved. So how is it so that in this case he can have the vow absolved even without the Chacham's intervention? The Yomar Lo, the Mudar, the subject of the vow, can say, Klum Amarta L'Mnei Kavodi, is it not so that your entire intention was simply to honor me? Zehu Kavodi, my ultimate honor is that I won't take from you. You wanted to honor me, and therefore you imposed this vow. This is my honor. My honor is not to take from you. V'chein ha'omer lechavero koinem she'ata neheneli. Mr. A says in this case to Mr. B, you, in contrast to the case we just had, which was koinem shani neheneloch, which was Mr. A vows not to benefit from Mr. B. I will no longer benefit from you unless, as we saw there, unless you take from me the items mentioned. Here, in this case, I vow that you, Mr. B, cannot benefit from me. Unless you give to my son this measure of wheat and 2 barrels of wine. Rabbi Meir Omer, Oserat Shiyitain. Rabbi Meir says this vow is binding until the conditions are met. So that according to Rabbi Meir, Mr. B will not be able to benefit from A unless Mr. B gives what he was requested. V'chachamim oimrim, af zeh yochel lahafiris nidro shelo al pi chacham. This case as well, like the first case, the vow can be absolved without a chacham. V'yomarlo, the madir, the one who imposed the vow, Mr. A, who prevented Mr. B from receiving hana, can now say, Harei ani ki'ilu niskabalti. I want you to know it right now is to me as if I received what I requested. The Gemara, much earlier in the Masechta, had dealt with these two cases and added the explanation in the first case where A says to Mr. B, I am not taking any more from you unless you come and take from me certain items. The explanation given was that up till this point, B was showering on A all kinds of good things. It made Mr. A uncomfortable to always be a receiver. So Mr. A put his foot down and says, I vow I'm not taking from you anymore unless you take something from me. In the second case, where A told B, I don't want you benefiting from me anymore unless you give me these things, give my son these things. There, A was always showering benefits on B. It was very one-sided, and he felt that it was unjustified, that he, Mr. A, is always granting benefits to Mr. B, so he wanted to see Mr. B do something in return, and hence he said what he did, and the Chachamim said that there you could reach a point at which Mr. A can say, okay, it's as if I received what I wanted in the first place. The Mishnah continues with a new marking, and we've highlighted the expression Hoyu Misarvin. Misarvin means they were pressuring. Hoyu Misarvin boy loses bas achoisoi. They were pressuring a certain man to marry his niece, which is allowed according to Jewish law. A person is allowed, and some will explain it's even a mitzvah for a man to marry his sister's daughter, a niece, through your sister. So they were pressuring him into doing that. The Omar, and he declared, Koinum shehinenes li la'olam. He issued a vow that she shall not benefit from me forever. V'chein hamagarish es ishto v'yomar koinim ishti nenes li la'olam. A person who had vowed someone who was going to divorce his wife, and he issued this vow that his wife shall not benefit from him forever. Harei elu mutoros lehonos lo. They are in fact allowed to benefit from him other kinds of hana. His intention with the vow was only with regard to the issue of marital status. And as Rashi puts it succinctly, Elo l'shem ishus shenodar shelo tehene mimenu derech ishus. His vow was that she should not benefit from him through, we'll say, matters that are related to intimacy. Therefore, as the Mishnah says, other benefits are still allowed, even though the language didn't actually reflect that. But looking at the circumstances, we come to this conclusion. A person was pressuring his friend to come and eat by him. Omar koinim lebeischo shani nichnas. And the fellow says he vows not to enter the house. Tipas tzoynein shani toyim loch. A drop of cold water I won't drink from you. The result of that vow is muter likones lebeisa v'lishtos menutzonein. He in fact is allowed to enter the inviter's house and drink a little cup of water. His intention was simply that to vow not to have a big meal with a lot of drink. The Rashi says toward the end, the person who was putting the pressure on his intention was I want you to come, and I'm pressuring you to come for a big meal with a lot of drink. When the potential guest responded with the vow, his vow was only a response to the pressure that was being put on him. The pressure that was being put on him was with regard to a large meal. The vow response was, I'm not going to have the large meal. But as far as looking at the vow in literal terms, so the Mishnah's Chiddush is we don't look at it that way, and therefore the mudar, the madir in this case, is allowed to go into the house and have a little cup of water. With that, we conclude our shiur for today.